You are not exhausted because life is inherently overwhelming. You are exhausted because your mind has become a place where nothing ever truly ends. Thoughts do not simply appear and disappear. Instead, they expand, multiply, and return in slightly different forms, demanding your attention again and again. This is the nature of overthinking. It is not merely thinking deeply. It is becoming trapped in an endless internal dialogue where every possibility must be explored, every outcome anticipated, and every decision questioned. In this state, your mind is constantly active, yet rarely productive. And while this process feels intense and important, it is quietly stealing your ability to live with clarity, confidence, and presence. Overthinking often disguises itself as intelligence. It gives you the impression that you are being careful, analytical, and responsible. You believe that by examining every angle, you are reducing risk and increasing the quality of your decisions. However, what actually happens is far more complex. The more you analyze, the more variables you introduce. Each variable creates new uncertainty, and each uncertainty demands further analysis. Instead of reaching a conclusion, you become increasingly aware of how many things you cannot control. This awareness does not lead to wisdom, it leads to hesitation. You begin to realize that for every decision, there are countless alternative paths, each with its own potential consequences. Rather than empowering you, this realization often leaves you immobilized. One of the defining features of overthinking at a deeper level is its inability to produce closure. In productive thinking, there is a movement toward resolution. Even if the outcome is imperfect, there is a point where you decide, act, and adapt. Overthinking resists this process. It keeps decisions open, unfinished, and constantly revisited. You may arrive at a conclusion, only to question it moments later. You may feel certain in one moment and doubtful in the next. This instability creates a mental environment where nothing feels solid. Without a sense of closure, your mind continues to search for answers that may not exist. At the core of overthinking lies a discomfort with uncertainty. Human beings naturally prefer predictability, but overthinkers often take this preference to an extreme. They do not simply want to reduce uncertainty, they want to eliminate it entirely. They seek a level of certainty that life cannot provide. As a result, they remain in a constant state of preparation, as if life were something that could be fully understood before it is lived. But life does not work this way. It unfolds in real time, often requiring decisions to be made with incomplete information. The attempt to fully understand everything before acting creates a paradox. The more you try to prepare, the less capable you become of actually engaging with reality. Emotionally, overthinking is closely linked to anxiety, but it operates in a subtle and persistent way. It does not always feel like panic. Instead, it often feels like concern, like caution, like responsibility. You tell yourself that you are simply trying to avoid mistakes or negative outcomes. However, this constant anticipation of problems keeps your nervous system in a state of tension. Even when nothing is wrong, your mind behaves as if something could go wrong at any moment. This creates a baseline level of stress that gradually becomes normal. You may not even realize how much energy you are losing because it has become your default state. Overthinking also distorts your perception of reality. When you spend too much time analyzing a situation, you begin to move away from what is actually happening and into what you imagine might be happening. Your interpretations become more influential than the facts themselves. For example, a simple delay in communication can evolve into a complex narrative about rejection, disapproval, or conflict. These narratives feel real because you have invested time and emotion into constructing them. However, they are often based on assumptions rather than evidence. This gap between perception and reality can lead to unnecessary emotional reactions and strained relationships. In decision-making, overthinking creates a unique form of paralysis. You are not unable to decide because you lack options. You are unable to decide because you have too many. Each option is analyzed in detail, and each potential outcome is evaluated. This process might seem thorough, but it often leads to diminishing returns. Beyond a certain point, additional thinking does not improve the quality of your decision. Instead, it increases your doubt. You begin to question not only the options, but also your ability to choose between them. This self-doubt reinforces the cycle, making future decisions even more difficult. Another important dimension of overthinking is its impact on self-trust. When you constantly question your thoughts, your choices, and your instincts, you gradually weaken your confidence in yourself. You begin to rely more on external validation or endless internal debate rather than your own judgment. This creates a fragile sense of identity, where your confidence depends on certainty. And since certainty is rarely achievable, your confidence remains unstable. Over time, this can lead to a deeper sense of insecurity, where even simple decisions feel significant and risky. Overthinking also has a temporal cost that is often underestimated. Time spent thinking is not inherently wasted, but time spent in repetitive, unproductive thought patterns is time that could have been used for action, experience, or rest. This is where overthinking becomes particularly harmful. It does not just affect your mental state, it affects the trajectory of your life. Opportunities are missed not because you are incapable, but because you are waiting for the right moment, the right plan, or the right level of certainty. Meanwhile, life continues to move forward, indifferent to your hesitation. There is also a strong connection between overthinking and perfectionism. When you believe that your decisions must be optimal, you naturally feel the need to think more before acting. You are not just looking for a good option, you are searching for the best possible one. However, in many real-life situations, the difference between a good decision and the best decision is minimal compared to the cost of delay. By aiming for perfection, you often sacrifice progress. Overthinking becomes a form of procrastination that is socially acceptable because it appears productive. Breaking free from overthinking requires more than simply thinking less. It requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to your thoughts. The first step is recognizing that not all thoughts deserve equal attention. Just because a thought appears does not mean it is important, accurate, or useful. Developing this awareness allows you to observe your thoughts without immediately engaging with them. You begin to see that many of your thoughts are repetitive patterns rather than meaningful insights. Another crucial step is redefining your relationship with uncertainty. Instead of viewing uncertainty as something to eliminate, you can begin to see it as an inherent part of life. This does not mean you ignore risks or act impulsively. It means you accept that complete certainty is not a requirement for action. When you adopt this perspective, you free yourself from the need to overanalyze every detail. You become more willing to make decisions based on the information available, rather than waiting for impossible clarity. Action plays a central role in overcoming overthinking. Thinking alone cannot resolve every problem. In many cases, clarity emerges through experience. When you take action, you receive feedback from reality. This feedback is often more valuable than any amount of internal analysis. It provides concrete information that helps you adjust and improve. Without action, you remain in a hypothetical space where everything is possible and nothing is confirmed. Setting boundaries for your thinking can also be highly effective. For example, you might decide to spend a specific amount of time evaluating a decision. Once that time has passed, you commit to a choice and move forward. This approach prevents your mind from endlessly extending the decision-making process. It also helps you build confidence in your ability to handle outcomes, even when they are uncertain. Practicing presence is another powerful way to counter overthinking. When your attention is fully engaged in the present moment, there is less space for unnecessary mental activity. This does not require complex techniques. It can be as simple as focusing on your breathing, paying attention to your surroundings, or fully engaging in a task. Over time, this practice strengthens your ability to remain grounded, reducing the tendency to drift into excessive thought. It is also important to challenge the assumption that more thinking always leads to better outcomes. In reality, there is a point where additional thinking becomes counterproductive. Recognizing this point allows you to shift from analysis to action more effectively. You begin to understand that good decisions are not always the result of perfect thinking, but often the result of timely action and the ability to adapt. Ultimately, overcoming overthinking is about rebuilding trust in yourself. It is about believing that you are capable of making decisions, handling consequences, and learning from experience. This trust does not come from certainty. It comes from repeated action. Each time you make a decision and move forward, you reinforce the idea that you do not need to have everything figured out in advance. Overthinking steals your life in subtle but significant ways. It does not stop you completely, but it slows you down, distracts you, and keeps you from fully engaging with the world around you. It replaces action with hesitation, clarity with doubt, and presence with distraction. However, the moment you become aware of this pattern, you also gain the ability to change it. Life is not meant to be fully understood before it is lived. It is meant to be experienced, explored, and navigated in real time. When you accept that uncertainty is unavoidable and that action is necessary, you begin to reclaim your energy and your time. You move from a state of constant analysis to a state of meaningful engagement. And in doing so, you take back what overthinking has been quietly taking from you, your ability to truly live.